welcome back to another video. So today I have a super special what if story to tell to you all. Carnelian is a character within the series that I really wish we got to see more of. There was so much complexity built in with her personality and insecurities, only for her to die in the cave explosion in the book she was introduced in. So in this tale, I'm going to dive into how one split-second decision and the love of a mind-reading Nightwing we all know and love genuinely saves Carnelian's life. There's a lot to explore here, and I think you guys are really going to love the end of this story. It's very special to me. But before we begin, a huge shout out to my patrons. DarkLover95, Slightest Wild, Thistle, Noobtoe, Pyronuke, Avril, and Pancake. Thank you all so much for supporting me. Links to their social medias are in the description down below. A huge piece of gratitude to Apollo the Sun God for making the art used in this video. It looks absolutely gorgeous and I couldn't be happier with it. There's a link to his social media down below. And this idea was sent in to me by Cats and Waff, so thank you for that as well. Anyways, without further ado, let's get into the video. I'm a loyal subject to Queen Ruby. I'm in the camp that believes Queen Scarlet is dead, and if she isn't, I'd be happy to kill her to protect my queen's throne. I'm here because my queen told me to be, although I should be training with my battalion and guarding her palace, not eating wet fish with a bunch of spineless dragonettes. My favorite color is red. Carnelian fought back a smirk at the rippling shock in Tsunami's eyes. Her winglet stared wordlessly, each dragonet shifting to avoid the Skywing's singeing gaze. Good, she thought to herself with a small flick of her tail. They should be scared. Tsunami finally responded after a long moment, her claws stabbing mercilessly into the stone below. Carnelian, she began, frustration oozing its way into her voice with a dark crackle. That is no way to talk about your clawmates. Jade Mountain Academy was founded for unity, not division. I understand that it's hard to transition from such different times after the war, but none of these dragons have hurt you. They're only here to be your friends. We left all that conflict behind. The Skywing scoffed, unfurling her large scarlet wings. Carnelian bit her tongue so sharply she swore she felt droplets of blood start to pool against her canines. I'll show her later. Tsunami must have had a similar thought, as she shot Carnelian a dangerous look that was as clear as a general's affirming glance. The crinkling of her face said it all. See me after class. Carnelian only stared back longer, even far after the Seawing's eyes had shifted. Carnelian, what was that? Tsunami said, craning her neck to ensure the rest of the winglet was moving down the tunnel out of earshot. The young Skywing only shrugged. I was telling them how I really feel. What? You don't want the students of your school to be honest? I don't care about them, and I never will. I'm only doing this for my queen. And the second she says I'm pardoned, I'll be out of here and back on the front lines. Tsunami huffed, clearly suppressing harsh words of her own. After staring hardly at the floor, she let out a quiet sigh. Look, I get that you don't want to be at Jade Mountain Academy. I understand how everything has changed so quickly for you, and you don't like that. But you have to get that it's that way for most dragons here. If no one tries to change that for our next generations, who will? What will happen to all of us? Another war? I'd like that, Carnelian said sharply. Tsunami ignored her. Even though your queen gave you a duty, it should be more than that, the Seawing continued. At least if you don't want to be here, just do it for them. Those dragonets need you, Carnelian, and I'm sure as the moons, you need them. The blood-red Skywing squinted, her gaze venomous. Fine, she said suddenly. I'll pretend. But there's nothing on Pyria and under the eye of my queen that could make me care about my clawmates, or anyone else who doesn't understand the harsh reality of our world and war. They're too different. They always will be. I'll be where I'm important soon enough. Carnelian shoved past Tsunami, letting wisps of smoke furl out from her nostrils. She doesn't get it either. The Skywing thought it should ascended down the dark cave system. No one ever will. Carnelian found every day to be more miserable than the last. Every period of school droned endlessly about things she knew were untrue. Dragons were more bloodthirsty, traitorous, and deadly than the Pyrrhian teachers dared to tell. The Skywing had seen it with her own eyes. The looks before murder on the battlefield, the way every good soldier would die before surrendering to anyone other than her true queen. The Jade Winglet only grew more sappy as the days passed. Moonwatcher, the youngest, had tried speaking to her once, despite Kinkaju's obvious disdain. I'm glad she's left me alone, Carnelian thought about the wild Rainwing Dragonet. For everyone else in her cave, however, finding isolation or challenge proved to be impossible, if one did not consider incessant jabbering to be a challenge, which Carnelian indeed did. Due to their proximity, the Skywing found herself being forced to learn about the Dragonet she studied with. Keebly was smart, and he knew it. If only he had been an ally during the war, then perhaps Carnelian would take comfort in his observations. Still, she felt as though he could never claw a fly unless it was his last option in the world. Too mushy, too unserious. Turtle was someone Carnelian thought could never even so much as see an open battlefield without crying and running the other way. He flopped around the school, trying to remain unseen. The Skywing scoffed at his efforts, only counting how long it took him to cross a room. I had to take on a rogue, muttering spy who moved miles faster than him. He wouldn't stand a chance in war, as all the weak princes under Coral wouldn't. The Seawings used to have more venom in them, and look where they are now. Carnelian saw through Winter's facade of confidence and superiority. Another failed prince? One who could never even herd a group of scavengers, let alone his own if he needed to. Moonwatcher and Kinkajou were in a category of their own, unnecessarily soft and disposable. The Skywing found herself growling curses around their mushiness the most. They should be shamed, she thought to herself. They could be so much more. Umber was the only dragon in her winglet that Carnelian had any ounce of respect towards. During their first session with Tsunami, she had discovered something about him Carnelian felt shocked she had not deduced. Umber was a dragon of war. He had fought with his siblings in great battles, and even on her side. The one dragon I might just be able to live with, Carnelian thought. I should ask him more about his role in the war. Maybe he knows how I can convince Ruby to move me up to general. Or, well, anything right now. Anything other than this ridiculous school. Deep in thought, Carnelian had no idea she even bumped into the aforementioned Nightwing. Moon stumbled slightly, her face pained. She furrowed her brow, rubbing away at her temples before staring up and blinking wildly at the Skywing. "Oh, I'm so sorry," Moon said, eyes wide. Carnelian moved slowly, eyeing the small dragonet carefully. She's always so nervous and timid. If only she were a shell of what her tribe was ages ago. Moonwatcher looked down suddenly, tracing the lines of the hallway floor with her gaze. The Skywing shook her head, saying nothing. Moon finally looked up, staring directly into Carnelian's cherry-red eyes. "Hey, I was wondering, do you want to go to the library with Kinkajou and I after lunch today? It's nice and quiet, and I usually see you alone each day. Just curious if you wanted the company." Carnelian growled low under her breath. "I'm not free." "Of course I am," she thought darkly. "There's nothing to do in this academy. No training, nothing useful for my life. I'd much rather spend my time staring at the walls of my sleeping cave than talk with dragonets that weak." Moon sucked in a tiny breath. The response had seemingly impacted her a lot more than Carnelian thought it would, and she blinked back nearly invisible tears. "Oh, right." The young Nightwing shook her head. "Yeah, I totally get it. The offer still stands if you're ever available, though. You can talk to either of us anytime." Before Carnelian could blink, Moonwatcher brushed beside her and carried on across the cave hall. Still, in spite of the quaking of the dragonet's parting words, Carnelian took notice of the Nightwing's round, moondrop eyes growing wide. There was something in them that gave Carnelian a feeling she had never experienced before. a looming heartbreak overcast Moon. To prevent from exploring the strange feeling more, the sky moved quickly across the other end of the long space. No, I have every right to ignore her company. I'm doing this for me. I deserve to. Cornelian found herself trying to forget the words before she could feel them, like any dragon should. Despite a hazy sense of normality beginning to spread across the academy, Cornelian's winglet had been acting weird. Of course I have to be paired up with the dragonets who keep looking over their shoulders, who can't walk straight in a hallway without whispering in Moonwatcher's ears, who won't shut up for 1 second when they think I'm asleep at night. They were hiding something, and despite Cornelian's frustration with the majority of the Jade Winglet, it would only help her skills in the battlefield to try to see what was happening, right? Surely if these dragonets were up to something awful, she could find out what they were plotting, and then Ruby would welcome her back into the kingdom with open talons. I could be a hero for the Skywings, Carnelian thought. After all, with all their scheming being painfully obvious against monotonous chatterings of other winglets. I'll find what they're planning. I'll show everyone. This morning, however, the Jade Winglet had been teeming with unusual unrest. Cornelian would not give them more credit than they deserved to plot something dastardly, but anything to get her out of this school? It would be worth having to stare at their bright, always jittering scales. The Skywing growled, pushing her way past other winglets to get to the art cave, just one period before tree. And more time to listen what they're always talking about, Cornelian thought with a stiff shrug. Younger dragonets darted out of her way, avoiding the Skywing's sharp, crimson tail. She suppressed a smile at the way they looked at her, fear pounding away inside of their small skulls. Exactly the respect I deserve, she thought to herself. Maybe someday my winglet will think the same before I leave them. After navigating the long tunnel system, Cornelian finally entered the art cave. It was a beautiful, quiet space, though she would never admit it. It reminded Cornelian of the daycare she stayed at as a young dragonet. Only that encouraged Skywings to conquer their fears in the moment by plunging off a steep edge, not stare down at the rocks below through a small window and think about doing it another day. Teaching dragons to be weak is not uncommon for this school, Cornelian thought with a low scoff. The Skywing planned to do very little that day, and only slide by with crafting something small while she overheard dangerous conversation. However, the Jade Winglet remained eerily quiet. It was as though a spirit had sucked all the air out of the room, leaving every dragon breathless, scared to even move a talon an inch to the side. Something has them scared, she thought. I wonder. Moonwatcher took her usual place beside Cornelian's wings. The small Snightwing's scales almost seemed to glow an iridescent green underneath the sun's warming rays. She stared quietly at her canvas, Cornelian nearly invisible to her. Kinkaju's face wore a weird sign of worry. It twisted in ways she wondered had it ever creased before. Above a whisper, Cornelian could make out a few of the rhyming strained words. Are you sure something could happen today? Kinkajou asked Moon, fidgeting nervously with the paint bucket. The Dark Nightwing nodded slowly, avoiding Kinkaju's helpless gaze. I don't know exactly what, but I've been having dreams of fire. Today's been the worst of them all. I remember seeing the flickering flames so vividly. I felt their blazing heat scorch my scales and the wings of another. Kinkajou let out a small whimper of worry, shaking her head as her scales grew gray. I just wish we knew more. The period passed through in bits of flittering silence. After the looming emptiness became too much for any dragon to bear, Umber finally started up a conversation between the Jade Winglet members. Even Winter was engaging himself mildly, sharing his own experiences as prince. Cornelian listened on, hissing in silence at the change of topic. Whatever it was that had them so fearful must be able to wait, she thought with a glance behind her. Can't believe I actually thought they'd be capable of more than talking until someone's ear bleeds. Those dragonets can never do a fraction of the work I've done, except the Mudwing. Despite everyone's sudden happiness, Cornelian only grew more sour as her crimson paint washed away the white of the canvas. And when the period ended, she left before Moon could approach her again. The lone Skywing made her way to the History Cave with an unusual sluggishness. The world had just seemed too quiet since Moon's vague comments of doom, and yet here everything stayed, chattery and usual. Cornelian sighed sharply, rounding the corner of the path she took each time to her next class. Suddenly, she caught sight of Moon on the other end, approaching with her typical awkward shuffle. Kinkajou as bubbly as ever, her scales rippling shades of yellow and pink that seemed to blind Cornelian more than the sun's blazing inferno. What happened next, however, was far greater than any hushed art cave whisper. Just as Cornelian was about to enter the history rune, Moon doubled over in pain. She clutched her talons to her stomach before immediately putting both claws on her temples again. The Nightwing Dragonette's eyes slammed shut, her body writhing against the stone floor. Keebly ran over, his mouth gaping open. "Moon! Moon! What's wrong?" he shouted over her feral hisses of torture. The Moonlight Nightwing only shook her head, tongue turned to lead. Cornelian stared, body paralyzed by the unearthly sight. Is she having a seizure? She thought. What under Ruby's sun is wrong with that stupid dragonet? At the conclusion of Cornelian's thought, Moon's eyes shot open. It's about the History Cave. She panted heavily, eyes darting everywhere like an animal snared in a trap, searching every corner, every fragment of light for an exit. Only Moon tussled with an invisible force. 3 moons, Keebly cursed. Cornelian and Bigtail, get away from there! The cave isn't safe! The Garnet Skywing had not even realized there was another Nightwing in front of her, blinking slowly with his brow furrowed. You're an idiot, Sandwing. It's perfectly fine in there, Cornelian said at last. But in a split second, Skywing caught sight of Moonwatcher's eyes. She had that same stupid, wide-eyed gaze as before. Begging, heartbroken pupils looked back at her. And for reasons Cornelian did not know, she hesitated. She moved herself an inch to the side at Moon's petrified, pleading eyes, despite the danger being invisible. And she had no idea why she even did. Time struck to a halting stop. Within a breath, Cornelian was no longer standing in front of Moonwatcher, Keebly, and a sickened Kinkajou. Bigtail was not even in front of her anymore. The first thing she saw was white. A colorless sea splashed across the Skywing's vision, before she felt her body plunge mercilessly into a shard of rock. Hissing violently, Cornelian took immediate notice of how much her body burned. Heat was rapidly spreading across her scales, pulsing violently at all her organs, tendons, and bones. I'm being burned alive, she thought with a sucked breath. No. No! A stalactite from the ceiling rained down on her, its edges coated in a fiery blaze. Cornelian's world turned red, her irises seemingly soaked with blood. An inky blackness sucked away at the color instantly after lapping dangerously at the corners of her vision, and nothing was left. The heat of the torturous flames waned. The screams of her clawmates evaporated into wisps of eternal silence. The bright flickerings of the fire turned to dust in her vision, and every feeling grew numb. Cornelian awoke to hushed, impatient whispers. The sound of dragonets nervously chattering seemed to fade in through each of her ears sluggishly. The young Skywing groaned softly, her red scales aching and every muscle stiff. She tried opening her eyes, but the world remained dark. A haze covered everything, causing Cornelian to shift uneasily. What happened? Upon her talons twitching, however, Kinkajou gasped. The sound rang in Cornelian's ears, her brain pulsing within the confines of her skull. She's awake! The jade winglet surrounded Cornelian's bed, muttering. Upon their excitement, another dragon's voice sounded nearby. I'm so sorry, Cornelian, she began. I told them not to be by your bedside when you woke up. I'm sure everything is overwhelming right now, but we'll be able to help you through it. She's our clawmate, Keebly said, hissing low. Of course we were going to be here. Cornelian remained silent, scared to so much as let her chest rise and fall in even breaths. Nothing was changing, no matter how hard she blinked away at the smudged shapes of dark colors in her vision. "What happened?" she asked. A hush fell over the room before Moonwatcher finally spoke. "It was Sora. She was trying to kill Icicle for revenge. She murdered Crane in the battlefield years ago, and it's all she's been able to think about since. Sora thought that she'd been there all by herself, but she timed the Dragonflame cactus wrong, and..." Cornelian could not mistake the sound of teardrops sliding gracefully down Moon's darkened snout. "She's crying? Over me? I don't even know her that well," Cornelian thought. "Well, I'm alive, aren't I?" Turtle nodded slowly, smiling. "Yeah, we thought we lost you for a while there, but you made it through. No one even knows how." "Bigtail didn't, though," Winter spat. "First Sora tries to kill my sister, then wounds a member of this stupid winglet, and then kills a Nightwing who wasn't involved." "Calm down, Winter," Kiwi said softly. "We'll find her." The doctor in the room sighed, tapping her brown tail to the floor of the healing cave. "I'll get Sunny and the others. I'm sure you all have a lot to talk about." Cornelian continued blinking, though her vision remained unclear. "Great," she said finally. "Not only do my scales burn whenever I move, but my eyes are clouded. This is no condition for a soldier." The Jade Winglet's breath hitched in their throats. At their slamming silence, Cornelian spoke again. "What?" Her heart began to pump in small, fitful beats. The feelings of her blood vessels gushing in her ears trumped every physical feeling. "Cornelian, you didn't know?" Moon asked quietly. The Crimson Skywing growled, shaking her head. "What is going on with them?" "Didn't know what?" "You're blind." "Permanently?" Cornelian roared, claws digging into her bed. "How am I supposed to stand on the front lines again and protect my kingdom if I can't even see any threats?" Winter swallowed dryly. "I'm so sorry." "Hey, maybe Starflight or Tamarin can help?" Kiwi said. "Tamarin's been blind her whole life, and Starflight had to adapt to it. Perhaps they could—" "No!" Cornelian snapped. She felt tears begin to brim at the edges of her milky eyes, red replaced with a void of snowy white. "I can't join the Skywing army if I can't fight. My dreams, my whole life, it's ruined now." Cornelian tried pushing the tears back, but they only fell harder. She could hear Moonwatcher's breath go strained as she buried her head into Kiwi's shoulder, tears washing away at her silver scales. "They can't fix me," Cornelian thought with a panic. "No one in the tribe will want to work with a dragon who can't even see her own spear. My entire life and my family's legacy is for me to fight. What am I without Ruby's respect? What am I if I can't protect the dragons I love? Nobody in my troop will even want to talk to me anymore. I'll be a disgrace, an outcast. I wasn't even wounded in the actual war or an important battle. I lost everything by standing in some stupid cave from some stupid school. I never wanted to come here. Jade Mountain Academy ruined my life." Moon only sobbed louder as the minutes passed in an empty stillness. Eventually, the Mudwing doctor returned with Tsunami and Sunny at her side. "Hey, Cornelian?" Tsunami began, her voice low. "Ruby's on her way from the Sky Kingdom right now. We are going to figure out what's next. Okay?" Cornelian only bit her tongue as her body grew weighted with lead. "I want to be alone." "Cornelian," Kinkajou started. "I said I want to be alone!" Everyone nodded finally, muttering fleeting words of farewell. After the nurse inspected Cornelian's eyes and burn wounds one final time, the young Skywing was finally left to herself. And she cried. Cornelian must have slipped into a fitful slumber, for she sluggishly gained awareness hours later. Though her wounds stung less as time passed, the unending emptiness that plagued her vision remained firmly. At her shifting, a knock came on the cave door. "Hey, Cornelian?" It was Moon's soft voice from through the stone slab. You don't have to let me in, but I just wanted to offer that I can sit with you if you'd like. Carnelian remained quiet for a few moments before finally answering, her voice graveled and neutral. You can. Anxious talons scratched across the floor of the cave before Moon took a place beside the Skywing's infirmary bed. She controlled her breaths before finally letting everything out in a sigh. I'm truly sorry this happened to you, she said. You didn't deserve it. I know how much being a soldier was important to you, and to just have your whole life, dreams, and expectations ripped away from you like that. Having gone through it before, not exactly, but it can't be easy. Carnelian thought. That's exactly how I feel right now. Thanks, she replied quickly, carefully tethering her tone to grim neutrality. Moon shook her head. And I'm sorry we kind of overwhelmed you last night, Carnelian. We just care about you. I'm sorry for not trying hard enough to be your friend, or to give you a chance. What? The Skywing said back, genuinely confused. You did offer. Yeah, but I didn't try hard enough. I knew you needed somebody, and I knew there was something going on with you, but I was too scared about my own fears and problems that I gave up. I didn't actually try to reach you. Anyone can offer another dragon a seat next to them at the library once or twice, but it takes a real friend to do more than that. To notice when the dragon next to them is hurting or lonely or probably dealing with a lot of problems himself. I should have tried to talk to you other than that, or offer you supplies and art, or even just wish you good night. We could have lost you yesterday. It just made me realize a lot of things, you know? Carnelian began. I never really thought about it that way, I guess. She wished she could look into Moon's warm, welcoming eyes one last time. Carnelian was bubbling with the regret of not trying enough with her or anyone else in the winglet either. Yeah, Moon said. Most dragons don't. But we can always be better. I'm sorry Jade Mountain hurt you, Carnelian. You can always go when Ruby invites you back home. I'm sure most dragons would. But no matter what you pick, I'm part of your winglet forever. We'll all always be here for you. It's the point of school, after all. We're not just training for a fight or how to suppress what we inevitably have to face. We're supposed to understand each other and ourselves. That takes the strength of a true warrior. It's like she knows everything I'm thinking, Carnelian thought with a small breath. But that makes me feel better, I think. I lost everything I used to have because of that fire. My friends in the troop, my worth, my future. Hey, Moon replied. It doesn't mean you can't make a new one. Despite the world being full of darkness, Carnelian could hear the smile in Moon's voice. It must look beautiful. She was sure of it. Carnelian smiled back. A moment later, Tsunami entered the healing cave. Moonwatcher silently slipped out, heading out into the main hall. Hey, the Dragon of Destiny said calmly as she leaned down. Queen Ruby just got here. Is it okay if I let her in? She's just down the tunnel. It's okay if you need more time. Carnelian nodded wordlessly. At the familiar sound of her queen's graceful claw steps, the young Skywing tried to lean up on her hospital bed. She winced at the shooting pain from her burn scars, head spinning. Tsunami must have exited, as the room was quiet now. We're finding the dragonet who did this, Ruby said firmly. She took a seat next to Carnelian, her breath strained. It broke my heart to hear about someone so young being involved in a fight she never had any part of. It's my fault as your queen, your leader, for not keeping you safe. I should not have forced you to attend Jade Mountain Academy, little one. You will be welcomed back into the kingdom with open arms. I can try to find someone who's able to train you if you wish to regain your previous positions on the battlefield when you're more healed. I cannot make any promises to how it will go, or if any of it will ever work, though. We've never had blind dragons in the Skywing army before. Ruby sighed. This is all my fault. It's okay, Your Majesty, Carnelian said suddenly. The queen quickly lifted her head, brow furrowed. I want to stay. Ruby's words caught in her throat, every muscle frozen. Are you sure? It's not safe here, Carnelian. It's okay to want to leave. You wouldn't be disappointing me or your troop. I promise. Carnelian shook her head. No, I want to be here. Ruby stared at the floor for a long while, deep in thought. When I first sent you to this academy, I thought it was for the better. You made your life all about your position in the army, as did so many Skywings and our troops. After all, it was everything you all knew. I thought I had done the right thing, until I heard about the explosion. In all honesty, my heart just broke for you. My mind was suddenly filled with doubts, and I believed my better judgment could have nearly ended your life. But to hear that you want to stay, even after I was subjected to all your complaints at the academy only a month ago, and this? What changed? Carnelian moved her wings to the side, spreading out comfortably on the hospital bed. It's less what and more who. I guess I just found something for me here. A group of dragonets were surrounded by my bed the moment I woke up, even though I had hurt them before. Dragons who returned to see if I was okay, even after I dismissed them and rejected them. It made me realize something I've always been too stubborn to acknowledge. I'm really going to miss fighting on the battlefield with my troops, Your Majesty. But there can be another future for me if I let there be. I'll try this school for a little while longer. If I don't like it, then I'll take you up on that offer and attempt a new training program and get back into my old life again. But for now, I think I like where I am here. I want to give this life a try before I give up on it. Ruby smiled, moving a claw to gently touch Carnelian's arm. A true warrior doesn't move to what's easier. You're very brave for this. The first time in a while, the Skywing smirked. I think I know a little Nightwing who might be braver than me. I'll try to be more like her and everyone else in my winglet. I'll give this new life a shot. Dearest Queen, I have come to slay your troops, Kinkajou declared through a fit of giggles. Keebly nearly toppled over from his laughter, wrapping an arm around Moon to remain upright. That is not what a general sounds like, Carnelian said with feigned indignance. And the giggling part is especially inaccurate. You're missing the excess growling fits and smoke puffs. Right. How could I forget? Kinkajou said, rolling her eyes playfully. Without any warning, she pounced on Turtle and Umber. They both laughed, swatting away at her with their claws. You guys are ridiculous, said Winter. He sat at the edge of their play space, watching over his small scavenger. Says the dragon trying to feed fruit the size of a dragon's head to a creature the size of his own palm, Keebly quipped. Winter's face grew blue. Hey, I don't know how hungry he is. Carnelian shook her head with small bits of laughter. I'm glad I didn't leave, the Skywing thought to herself as she watched her winglet wrestle on in the small tufts of grass. My life is different now, but that doesn't always have to be a bad thing. I can be resilient like a soldier in my own way, not just through wielding a sword. And I think I like that. I like them. I owe it all to that weird, shy Nightwing dragonet. And I hope she knows I truly care about her now. I hope they all know. My life is going to be so different now, but I'm not in it alone. I have a troop of dragons right here that forgave me of my mistakes. It's time I start forgiving myself too. The Skywing shot a smile towards the direction of the giggling dragonets. And even though Carnelian could not see it, she knew deep inside her heart that Moonwatcher and the others smiled back. I hope you guys enjoyed this story. I think it's really sweet to see how things come together here, and this is a tale I would have loved for Carnelian in the books. That one bit of hesitation upon seeing the genuine care in Moon's eyes is enough to cause the young Skywing to move ever so slightly. And with that, the fire and falling rocks affected her differently. She was even spared a gruesome death with that different spot she lay in. Let me know your thoughts on the story down below, especially your favorite part. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.